Jameson,
Here.
Skit,
Present.
Zimmerman,
Present.
Mayor Richardson.
Here, will you stand with me for the pledge, please? Put your hand over your heart, repeat after me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
City Manager's report.
A couple things I'd like to report on. One is the city has launched a new website on cityofsolvang.com, and we would encourage people to visit that and give us comments, feedback, positive or negative, on that website. We did have to go a little earlier than we normally planned because our other website got hacked twice within a week. So, so yeah, we're up and running, and this one's free from hackers. And then second, I just want to let the public know that we have exhausted the funds in our landscape rebate program. So we'll no longer be accepting applications for that. We are still taking applications for the rain barrel program, though. So we would.
Is the toilet program in effect, or is that been?
Yeah, the toilet program's still in effect also. Yeah. And that's my report.
Council comments and requests. Would you like to start, Neil? Mr. Zimmerman? Oh, I should do that, huh? Darn. Public communications, written or verbal. At this time, please direct comments to the City Council regarding consent calendar items or matters not on the agenda, but within the jurisdiction of the council. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes. Shirley, did you want to speak at the public comment time with this? Yes. Would you please come up?
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, I am Shirley Stacy. I represent the County Library Advisory Committee, and I'm here to talk briefly about the decision that they made to go ahead with plans to put a proposal on the November ballot to help fund libraries. This would be a county-wide parcel tax proposal. Even with the increase in per capita from the county this year, the funds are still inadequate. The cities are putting in what they can, as are the Friends of the Library, but more is still needed, so we don't use up all our reserves or have to reduce hours. We have had 2 meetings of a subcommittee made up of representatives from the cities in the county that will be reporting back to our county committee on January 20th. There have been 2 conference calls with a consultant from a nonprofit group called Every Library. Their purpose is to offer advice to libraries that plan to put a measure on the ballot. We will be embarking on our first round of outreach in the next couple of weeks. We will be contacting people in education, business, and politics in our individual communities to inform them of the needs of the libraries and to talk about how we can help each other. I will keep you informed as the plans for the tax proposal develop.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
May I ask her a question?
Sorry?
May I ask a question of her?
Yeah.
Do we know how much the tax is going to be?
Not specifically, but we're, because it's not until May that we actually write up the proposal and everything, but we are talking in the neighborhood of $20. Basically it will be determined on the needs that are stated for the libraries to keep them solvent.
So who's doing that study for you? What was the name of the group?
Every Library. It's a nonprofit, and they're a consulting operation, and it's free. They get their money from grants. So it's really it's very useful. It's
So
good.
has anybody are they going to be doing a survey to see what the people are willing to pay? Is that part of their
Actually,
service?
he doesn't feel that we have, the person that we were talking to or have been talking to, doesn't feel that we have time to do that. And that, basically we can, in an informal way, which is what I was talking about, doing the contacts that we want to try and do in the next couple of weeks, that we can, get a feel for what that might look like. So, no polling is planned, at this point. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, did you say this was a countywide tax?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Shirley. Fred Koval?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members. Fred Koval. A couple of new items. I remember in '91, the Miracle March rains. What did it do to wells 3 and 7A? Well, you can see what happened to 7A. Today it's still sitting up there about 8-10 feet. Palmer Jackson did do quite a bit of work to mitigate what the well did look like, because it was up even 4 or 5 feet higher until he bulldozed everything back to Alamo Potato Creek. And of course, he put it in his rocks sometime later on. Now, the city council back then had 90 days to get FEMA funds, and it never happened. I hope it doesn't happen again. If this occurs, if we get Miracle March rains, we get it just metered out, and all of a sudden we get some bank-to-bank flow, then I hope you guys have a contingency plan in mind to recover those wells. For a well in the river, I vote for one well. Try one well. Try and get one well by well 3. That's your most promising thing. Go with one right now, instead of trying to do the whole thing like the city councils have failed to do since 1985. Some recap items. You know, Michael Jackson, who runs the Bureau of Reclamation, is just hoping that there's going to be rain, and he has stated that he's definitely going to let them move the barge, and he's going to whatever water the South Coast wants, he's going to give it to them. Never mind what kind of rights, downriver rights, there are. They're just going to be blown away. It's going to be whoever gets the water first will get the water for next year. And of course, speaking of water, when you look at NOAA's El Nino, that's just one of many possibilities. If you look at the Farmer's Almanac, it's a sad case. They're saying there's not going to be any rains, appreciable rains, this year. If you look at Weather Underground, they have another long-range report. In fact, all you have to do is just Google and go down the line, spend about 10 minutes, and you can find out just what the average thinking is going to be for this next 3 months. Will it be there or won't it be there? You'll have to make up your own minds on that and plan accordingly. Now,
Fred,
yes,
there's a red light on.
how did that happen? Oh, it never got started.
Oh, didn't it? Didn't it get reset?
No, that's okay. I'll take another 10 minutes.
I'll give you a couple more minutes.
Okay. Oh, you're so generous.
I am. I'm kind and generous.
Yeah, I know. You and Hillary. Okay, so then the last thing is, you had this back and forth. I walk with the grandkids almost every Sunday down to the river, and we go all the way east to Refugio Road. And we take the path past your current, whatever that is. I assume that's where you bring the state water in. And it's a path down, all the way down. And you look over there and you go down to those people's homes that were saying, hey, we're going to lose our whole scenic beauty. Well, you go down to their homes, they see nothing. They see the tops of the mountains, and that's about it. Nobody's ever really gone down there and take some pictures from their homes back east to see what it would be like. But regardless of that, if you have to put a treatment plant in there, just dig a hole. It'd be so easy. And then everybody will be satisfied. And so that's pretty much it. I'm really worried about I'm really worried about what happens if the barge gets put in place, and all of a sudden, even for our 2 wells, that they'll be sucking air. One final thing, if I may, 10 seconds, 15 seconds. I think it's so important to really advance the idea to buy water from ID1, 500 acre-feet a month. Make that happen. Get a special rate for that.
Wells 22 and 23, that's about the only wells you should be concentrating on.
Thank you, Fred. Hazel Mortensen? Oh, wait, no, you don't have a speaker slip for public. No, I'm sorry, yours is for agenda item 6, about the water rate increase, is that correct?
Oh, no. This is just a different issue.
Okay,
Okay.
I don't speak for
Okay. Good evening, council members. My name's Hazel Mortensen. It has come to my attention and to the attention of others that we have a rat problem in Solvang. And of course roaches too. In bakeries, restaurants, most likely all places that sell food. I, for one, will boycott these businesses until they clean up their act. No restaurant or prepared food for me unless they will show me their kitchen. If we all do likewise, they will have to have sanitary conditions as we have a right to expect. I doubt that any food place in our county is any better, in Santa Barbara County, because the health department, when I called, said that we can only afford one inspection, one business per year. That is totally not responsible. And I feel that's easily taken care of. We rectify that problem by having everyone that sells food in the county of Santa Barbara pay $100 or $200 more a year for additional health inspections. I'm extremely disturbed by some of the things that are happening in Solvang. I went to the police department and banged on the door for 10 minutes. I could hear them in there, and I thought maybe they were deaf. A fellow came out after 10 minutes or so. Oh, they're out to lunch. And I said, you're kidding me. You know, 80 years old, I go to the police department, they're out to lunch. I've never experienced anything like it. I did tell the city manager here I didn't appreciate people being out to lunch when I'd lost my wallet and I wanted to see if somebody turned it in. Anyway, I hope the hospital doesn't follow suit because I'd hate to have a heart attack and they're out to lunch. Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel. That's all the speaker slip I have for public comment. Does anybody else wish to talk? If not, we'll go to council comments. Now, Mr. Zimmerman, would you like to start?
Happy New Year, everybody, and thank you for attending tonight, and thank you for your comments. It was a nice break. It was a nice holiday to enjoy family and friends, and hope everybody had a wonderful time over the past month or so. I want to welcome everybody, and cheers to a wonderful meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Skip?
I'd also like to pass on my wishes for a Happy New Year. It was a nice New Year. In reference to what Fred was talking about, water, Kachuma is now down to under 15% capacity. The elevation is down just about 88.5 feet down. The little bit of rain we've had in the last couple of weeks has brought it up about an inch or two, but it's not appreciable. I was up in the Tahoe area, the Sierras, during the between Christmas and New Year's, and there is snow up there. It's the best snow they've had in the last 5 years, but it's only January, so who knows what's going to happen. Lake Tahoe did come up about 3 inches over the last couple of weeks with the snowfall and a little bit of rain they've had. But it portends for a good snowfall, but until we actually get to the end of the year, we really don't know what we're going to have out of it. And the other comment I'm going to make is in regards to Mrs. Mortensen's, Hazel's comments about the rats. The rats are endemic throughout the city of Solvang, not just only in the business district. They are all over the place. I know we have at my facility, which is the old Solvang Mill and Lumberyard, we have our bait stations for rats because we were running a major problem with them because they live in the palm trees, they live in ivy, they live under the buildings, they live in buildings, and rats are one of these the animals that is one of the most adaptable animals in the world, and they like being in the neighborhood of the human population. So everybody, not only in the business district, should you look out for rats. They are in the neighborhoods also. So if you have any major undergrowth around your house or palm trees, you might want to consider having an exterminator come in, take a look, and maybe set some bait stations around to keep the rat population under control, because they are out there in the entire community, and that's.
I don't have the rats.
Oh, there are rats in your neighborhood. I'll tell you that right now. They are in the neighborhood.
Where we have slums, we have rats, so yes.
Where you have heavy vegetation and around the houses, you may not see them there, but the rats are in the neighborhood.
Thank you. Mr. Deuce?
Yeah, I'll wish everybody a Happy New Year also. Just want everybody to keep Kevin Harmer in their prayers. He was he is our water supervisor. Was critically injured in an auto accident on the way to work, what was about 3 weeks ago. Still at Cottage. I don't believe he's out of the coma yet. We went down to see him about a week and a half ago. Looking at him, he looks good, like he was taking a nap. But anyway, it's going to be a long, hard road for Kevin and his family. So our prayers go out to him. Thank you.
Mrs. Jameson?
And to go on top of what Han said about Kevin, you can go to a website called Caring Bridge, and you can follow his progress along that website. And you have to sign up and, get a code name and all that, but it's really simple. And if you care to, you can make contributions to him through the same website. Caring Bridge. C-A-R-I-N. Caring, like we're caring for somebody. C-A-R-I-N-G-B-R-I-D-G-E. And then I had a number of phone calls, plus I guess there was a lot of chatter on Facebook about the fact that we did not have a Christmas tree burn and how much it's going to cost us now that we have to move all those trees. So I asked Brad to kind of look into it, and I'm going to let him tell you what he gave back to me, just so that the people in the community understand why we didn't have it and what the costs are not going to be.
Okay, well, we didn't have it because a couple of reasons. One, very wet and muddy conditions there. Also, with the wet pile, the fire department was real concerned on the burn permit issue, so we jointly decided to cancel it this year. In regards to the cost to remove the trees, Waste Management, under our agreement with them, is responsible every year to, if we hadn't have had the tree burn, to remove them for recycling. So there's no additional cost. It's included in our franchise agreement with Waste Management.
And you might tell them how much we saved.
Well, when we do a tree burn, we've added the band and the popcorn, and that cost us about $800, $900. This year we were able to save that because we canceled it in time enough to cancel both of those. So, and then staff time, we typically put about 50 some hours into that, and because we did not have it, we were down to about probably 20 hours of staff time for it. So, a little savings in that.
So that's good.
Yep.
And I know that we do want to come back, and people are concerned that it might not, but
Yeah, it's not a permanent cancellation. It was just due to the way the storms came in and the wet conditions. So each year we'll assess that as we do every year.
okay, thank you. I hope people are listening out there so that it was just amazing, the little flyings back and forth of what people were talking about. Facebook can be good, and sometimes it's not so good. But Happy New Year to all of you out there in TV land, to the people that are here. I don't know why you're here tonight, because there's a fantastic football game on, and that's where I would much rather be. And the latest score was 14-14. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll wish everyone a happy New Year also. But what I did want to talk about is last week ID1 held a water workshop, and the agenda was of 2 items. One was the treatment of the chromium-6 problem, and the other was a water rate increase study. The significant thing about the chromium increase is that I believe that ID1 board has come to the conclusion that one of 2 preferred treatment methods will be used, which initially were going to cost the neighborhood of over $20 million. They've reduced it down to something like $5 million now, which is a godsend. They have a timetable about getting it accomplished. Their funding is going to be grants and state and federal funding, I imagine. But the significant thing that concerns me is that the output of that treatment will be going into the sewer. And I've been reassured by Public Works that the amount of effluent that they'll be generating to put into our sewer won't impact us much, but it's something we need to be aware of, that ID1 will be putting their water treatment waste into the sewer system. So we may want to keep our eye out for that. The other was the water rate increases, their study. The interesting thing about that was there was 2 interesting points. One is that the study group indicated that it would be a good idea to change the rates the way that they charge Solvang for water. And it's their comment was it's a demand situation. There are 200 or 2,000 meters on the system that ID1 has to prepare for, and so there's an overhead that Solvang isn't paying. And they're looking at adjusting our rates, I imagine, for that. The other thing that is interesting is that because their revenues are short, up until 2010 there was an ad valorem tax or fee on each water user, and it was suspended. It wasn't terminated, and they're discussing the reinstitution of that tax. And my question to them was, can you do that without a vote of the people? The answer was yes. I said, is there a termination date? And I got a response, I believe, that was no, there was not a termination date. It's a fee that can be incorporated. So I want everybody to be aware that ID1 may be instituting an ad valorem property tax within the cities of Solvang and within their jurisdiction, of which Solvang is a part of. And in my mind, that goes against them wanting to increase our water rates, because we're a demand system, and yet we can pay for some of that plumbing that they have. So I want you to be aware of that, and as this thing develops, I'll be sure that everybody knows about it and what we can try and do to make it an equal, to be fair about it. The discussion was also brought up the possibility of a water service agreement with ID1. We attempted that before. But I think that the legal costs got overbearing. They wanted us to pay for most of their legal costs, and I think that's one of the reasons we dropped out. But if the water ad hoc committee wants to discuss a water service agreement, I would encourage you to do so, to see if there's a benefit to that over paying for water rate increases. Last week I also attended something that's going to be beneficial to our county. It's called Aware and Prepare. It's an Aware and Prepare program, which is an alert and notification system that will alert people down to a relatively small neighborhood of impending disasters or natural disasters, evacuation necessities, fire, any kind of that thing. The only thing is that everyone is required to register with it so they can be notified. And the software system that they've developed has been a pretty comprehensive one. The demonstration we had indicated that they can notify people down to an area of less than a half a mile in diameter, sometimes even less. So I want to make you aware of the website to go there and register. The program will notify you through any number of contacts that you have: your home phone, your cell phone, your car phone, your work phone, any other method you have, texting, those sorts of things. So that's and also through the internet to your computer at home. The website is called Aware and Prepare, awareandprepare.org. And I would encourage everyone to access that website and register for those notifications.
What's the difference between that and the reverse 911 call?
It's more comprehensive than a reverse 911 call. A reverse 911 call can blanket major areas. This personalizes and identifies smaller areas of concern. An example was given: if there's a fire in the mountains and horse trailers are necessary, a broadcast can be blanketed into an area that asking for if people have their horse trailers to move their horses, or if do they have empty horse trailers they can volunteer to use to transport horses and other large animals. It's that kind of notification process. It's pretty.
So you have to register what your availabilities are, or what you're interested in doing.
Yes, they have
Okay.
boxes of your skills and techniques that you can use. So go to the website. It's pretty comprehensive.
Jim, are you done?
Yes, I'm done.
I've got a question for you. Last meeting, we were the ad hoc committee was asked to talk about merger or joint powers agreement with ID1. Are you now asking us to also talk about a water service agreement?
That was brought up at their meeting. Yes, that they would. The question was, should we get involved in a water service agreement with them? So that could be one of your agenda items.
That could be another one. Okay. All right.
With that, we'll go on to approval of the agenda as presented. Is there any changes to the agenda?
Item 5F on the consent agenda has been requested to be pulled by the applicant
Okay.
that requested it.
Item 5F is tabled. The council minutes of December the 14th. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions to those minutes? And if not, can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Pass. The consent agenda. Does anyone have any items on the consent agenda they wish to pull? Seeing none, can I have a motion accepting the consent agenda?
I so move.
Is there a second?
A second.
We can have a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Jamerson,
Yes.
Deuce,
Yes.
Skit,
Yes.
Zimmerman,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
Yes, and that passes with a 5-0. On to the regular agenda.
Item 6, annual water and sewer rate increases and potential general fund subsidies, and review of Stage 2 drought regulations.
Staff report.
I'm bringing up the big guns with me in case there's questions. This was a three-way staff report, or actually four-way. We had legal in it also. But at your November 9th meeting, the council discussed the annual water rate increase and requested staff return with options to utilize general fund money to subsidize the water fund without violating the rate covenant that the city has under its water supply agreement with San Ynez River Water Conservation District, Improvement District Number 1. That staff report from November is included as an attachment to this staff report. When evaluating your water rates, it is important to be aware of the requirements of that water supply agreement with ID1, which is dated August 1 of 1991. And the requirement of the covenant is as follows. Amounts of rates and charges. The city will fix, prescribe, and collect rates and charges for the water system, which will be at least sufficient to yield during each fiscal year city net water system revenues equal to 125% of the city payments for such fiscal year. The city may make adjustments from time to time in such rates and charges and may make such classification thereof as it deems necessary, but shall not reduce the rates and charges then in effect unless the city net water system revenues from such reduced rates and charges will at all times be sufficient to meet the requirements of this section. So please note that in the water supply agreement, the net water system revenue is defined as the city water system revenues, and that's revenue derived by operating the water system and not including general fund contributions if you were to choose to do that, minus city operation and maintenance expense. This means that the rate covenant requirement must be met from the ratepayers and not the general fund contributions. Rates must be set high enough to pay for operational and maintenance and comply with 125% covenant. Capital expenditures can be made from the general fund, but then the additional operation and maintenance cost to the system that occurs as a result of those projects must be included in the rates and can't be paid by the general fund just because the particular capital project that creates the expense did not exist when the rate covenant was entered into. Absent the covenant, there's no such legal limitation on the use of general fund revenues to help pay for the cost of water. As quoted, that's all quoted from the attorney. So the city is required each year to report to the CCWA the rate coverage in January for the previous fiscal year. And for the last fiscal year, 14-15, our ratio was 133 or 1.33 ratio. And we do not believe the city will meet the ratio requirement in 15-16 if all of our expenses were as budgeted were included. We would be at 104% or 1.04. And this is mainly due to the inclusion of the state water payment of that one-time $700,000 fee for the 300 acre feet of suspended water, table A water. Now we have, since I wrote the staff report, contacted CCWA, and due to the timing that it's going to take to get through the county, they anticipate that payment's probably not going to happen in this current fiscal year. So that would alter the statement in the staff report, and probably if you take that $700,000 off in that table that's included, we'd go from 1.04 to 1.267, so we would just meet the rate covenant requirement if everything else falls out as the budget is planned. So but it is important that if we are not meeting the rate covenant, it could potentially be a breach of our contract, and we would need to show a plan that would bring the ratio to the minimum coverage. So this staff report was written in that it didn't anticipate meeting it in the current fiscal year, but now that's probably going to get pushed to the next fiscal year when that $700,000 payment is due. So it is to note that recently a CCWA member was threatened with enforcement action when they did not meet the coverage, but they did change their rates, increase them, and they were able to meet the requirement in the next year. As I had described in the last staff report back in November, the city has incurred quite a few additional increases in its water fund and wastewater funds due to new capital projects, plus reductions in the water sales due to the excellent conservation by our customers. Another issue that we were asked to talk about is the Stage 2 drought penalties. When the council adopted the resolution, and I have to note, the resolution that's an attachment in the packet actually has the old penalty structure in it that was initially approved. When we changed to the days of watering, somehow the two resolutions got crisscrossed. So the penalties that are listed in the staff report are the accurate penalties that we've been enforcing, but the resolution that was attached actually had an old set that had been changed. So if you were to increase the consumption charges, rate increases, those would change the penalties because the penalties were tied to that per unit fee. So currently, the 0 to 13 unit charge is $3.16, and then it goes 1.5, 2.5 as the customer goes up in the rate structure, and the increases go anywhere from 29 cents to 72 cents a unit. If you were to increase the rates, then as I say, the penalties would also go up. Similar to the commercial would also go from their 1.5% time penalty would go from $5.15 a unit to $5.62 a unit. One of the questions that was brought up back in November was, what are we actually required to have? Because we're under 3,000 service connections, the only requirement in the state's drought declaration is that we, and I'll read this, to promote water conservation, each distributor of a public water supply, as defined in Water Code Section 350, that is not an urban water supplier shall within 30 days take one or more of the following actions. One is to limit outdoor irrigation of ornamental landscapes or turf with potable water by persons it serves to no more than 2 days a week. Or two, to implement another mandatory conservation measure or measures intended to achieve a comparable reduction in water consumption by the persons it serves relative to the amount of water conserved in 2013. So in essence, we have our stage 2 drought resolution, which has the penalty structure and pretty much all the stuff that the state had required of the urban users. And it seems to have done pretty well. Our customer base is down 31% from in 2015 based on 2013. So we feel that the penalties have definitely helped us maintain that conservation. In the staff report, I show the budget expense, revenue, and net position change for the last 5 years, which was also in your last staff report. There are some slight changes. We've went back and looked at where we think we'll end up on the water side. You had a total of about $7.5 million in expenses that was proposed in the budget. We think that some of those will be reduced by about $1 million due to, actually, once again, it's $1 million, and then the $700,000 would not have to be paid this year. So it's actually 1.7 less than we would anticipated. So yeah, it'll most likely, our net position we anticipate will change by 1.9 million at the end of the fiscal year. So what we've done is we've listed several alternatives for the council to consider, and I'll go through those. One is the city council could choose to implement any amount of increase up to the maximums that were in the 218 study, and that's 3.71 for the monthly meter fee and up to 8.96% of the water usage fee and 1.6 for wastewater. If the council chooses not to follow the recommendation of the rate study consultant and not implement the full increase, we would at least expect or hope that the council would do the CPI, which is a 1.6% increase. Two, the council could choose to utilize money from the general fund reserves to fund some of the capital or one-time expenditures. An example would be to utilize it to pay the initial investment for the 300 acre feet of suspended table A water at a cost of $702,000. Three, part of the cost of the operations budget for water is our annual overhead contribution. And that essentially was based on a study we did several years ago that what the general fund's obligation to make water and sewer operate is. And that cost was assigned at $254,685 on an annual basis for water. So the city council could choose not to transfer that money from the water fund to the general fund. While that's not a good accounting practice, it may be a way for the general fund to subsidize the water fund if that was the choice of the council. Now, this would definitely result in a less revenue as anticipated for the general fund. Four, the city council could choose to implement the full rate increase of up to the maximum of 3.71 for the monthly fee and up to 8.96 for the water usage fee, and remove the stage 2 drought penalties. This would result in residential rates of $3.45 per unit for the first 16 units and $4.05 per unit for those over 16. Commercial rates would go up to $3.75 a unit. Monthly meter fees would go up as per the Prop 218 formula that was sent out in 2010. There's about 8 different categories of that, but it goes up anywhere from, I believe, $5 to about $105 on the lower units. 5 would be to invest unassigned fund balance or reserves into a higher risk investment and utilize returns to offset water cost. If we were to take, say, $3 million of general fund unassigned funds and invest it in a 5-year fixed bond rate at 2%, it would result in approximately $60,000 in annual revenue that could be allocated back towards the water fund. 6, the city could pursue bonding for capital improvements, which would require that this would also require that rates be raised to meet the additional debt obligation on top of the 1.25 obligation you have on your state water payments. 7, the city could reevaluate its capital plan and spread out the cost of certain projects. However, some of the projects are related to the current drought, such as the upland well development, and have been approved by the council's measures to mitigate the drought impacts to the residents. So they would have some effects. Those are some of the options we came up with. Just a brief summary of the fiscal side of this. Obviously, there's a whole magnitude of potential fiscal impacts on this. any changes that you make to the rates for in this current fiscal year wouldn't take effect to the January billing, so you'd only have a few months of that on this current fiscal year of revenue. We did show you in the fiscal impacts where we think we'll be based on the calendar year. You can see, based on these consumptions with our savings and whatnot, the water revenue, we expect it to be almost identical to last year's last calendar year water year. It ended up being about $500 difference. And then on the sewer side, about $7,500, a little more in revenue than prior. So in doing some just rough numbers on what a 3.71% increase to the water rates would be, we think that'd be about $160,000 of additional revenue if we had similar water sales in 2016 to 2015, and wastewater would see about a $22,000 increase. And if the rates, if you went to the full amount as previously approved under the Prop 218 process, that would result in about a $243,000 increase in revenue for water, and about, as I said before, about $22,000 for the wastewater fund. So that's we're here for questions. We've tried to put together what we thought were some options for you based on the direction that we were given in November, and that concludes my report.
Okay, are there any questions of the staff report?
Yeah.
Mr. Deuce.
That last part there, Brad, where you were looking at the Prop 218, the very last paragraph in Section 4. In coming up with that, were you leaving penalties in as part of that that 243,000 water increase?
Let me look at my number on that. That was strictly on the usage, taking the usage from 2015 and multiplying it by that percentage. So it'd be
Without penalty.
yeah, with the penalty.
That is with or without?
With just a two-tier.
Okay, just the
yeah.
two-tier
Mhm.
approach.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Zimmerman?
This rate adjustment is based on the 2011 rates, or the study?
Yeah, the one we did in 2011.
Are we going to do a current study?
You have allocated funds for a new rate study to be done in this fiscal year.
Okay. And why wasn't the work done in 2012, 2013 for the 2011 rate study? Why are we still working on a project that was supposed to be completed back then? That's why we're paying these rates now, right?
Well, no, the rate study was a 5-year rate development to cover your 10-year capital plan. So the intent wasn't to build 10 years of projects in 1 year. It was it took a look at your 10-year capital plan, took a look at all of your power needs, your operational needs, and then allocated what you need each year to run that. And that's where you got your rate establishment from. So it became up 5% a year, or 5.25% for the first 4 years, and 3.71 for the last year.
Okay, so we didn't get this rate study based on work that we were going to do in the past? Isn't that why we had the rate study done, because it was the projects that we would have to pay for?
It was based on the capital plan that was in place at that time. Now, as I've said, we've changed. Upland wells were not part of that plan in 2011. We've added that. We did have the river well component, which we've only done small parts of that due to the permitting issues. So those have changed. So the capital side of this has changed from different pots, really. From river to upland wells.
Okay.
And just to chime in addition, the study then and the decision-making, the council contemplated bonding for significant capital improvements. Part of the idea about bonding, it's twofold. One is that way you don't have to charge rates even in that 5-year period to pay for all the capital improvements, and it spreads the cost out. Additionally, it's kind of a generational fairness idea. In other words, if you didn't do bonding approach to get the capital improvements in, then the people who are paying rates for just this 5 years are paying for all the improvements instead of the people 15 years or so down the road. So it kind of makes sure that the ratepayers are treated in this concept more fairly that way. So it was never contemplated in that study or the council action in 2011 that all those capital improvement projects will be done without bonding. The idea was that bonding was going to be used to spread that expense. But also in that study, we did not contemplate the drastic drought that has taken place since then. And so things have changed. The fees that were put in place in 2011, by statute, you can spread the increase out over a 5-year period. Technically, legally, all of the entire fee increase was approved back in based on the 2011 study and adopted. This council and the previous council, as a matter of policy, have wanted staff to bring it back to look at every year. You don't have to. It's not a new Prop 218 process, but you have wanted to look at it every year because you decided as a matter of policy that was a good idea. And that's a legal thing to do, although it's always painful to have water on the agenda.
Are there any other questions of the staff report? Seeing none, we'll take it.
I have one question. We can change the water usage percentage up to 8.96%. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Through that, we
the
have-
Prop 218 process has up to, essentially each year. And so you did not trigger the consumption rate in 2011. So you have that 5.25 plus the 3.71.
Okay.
If there's no other questions, we'll go to the public for comment. Hazel, did you still want to comment on this? And would you please come forward?
Yes, I'd heard that, Mr. Hawes, that you had suggested a 12% bed tax be used towards this debt. No? Oh, okay. Well, that's the rumor. I think that would be a good idea. And in addition, since I've heard everything from 1.5 to 2 million tourists, they're using a hell of a lot more water than I am. I would think that a percentage of the sales tax that comes from them should definitely go to this. Even if they don't stay overnight, they're going to eat, use water, and flush a toilet, I assume. So I think that on my street, I pay over $5,000 a year for property taxes. I've never sent a child to school here. I have no mail pickup on my street. I have no trash pickup on my street. I have no street sweeping, and I have no street lights. So I sometimes wonder, what am I paying for? Thank you.
Thank you, Hazel. Fred Koval?
Do we know what that background noise is? Oh, it stopped. It stopped. No, there
No.
it is again. What is it?
Oh, it's college, it's a football
Sound-
game.
Like heavy breathing.
You know, it's kind of interesting, Fred Koval, Solvang. You know, it's kind of interesting that every year, there's at least once a year, you always go to the resolution, and it's always wrong on that item that Brad pointed out. There's 0 to 10 instead of 0 to 13. It just keeps reoccurring. It's just doesn't make any sense how it's not picked up and corrected. Then I go to that resolution 15-968, and I go down about the 5th whereas. During the fiscal year 13-14, the city incurred unplanned expenses of $625,000. Okay, and unplanned. But you voted on it and passed it. You made a commitment then without realizing the impacts at this point in time. Then you go down a couple of more whereases. The long-range projections for 2015, for winter 2015, been downgraded. Have they? I don't know if they have. I think if you look at the December report, NOAA report, they were right up there. That doesn't seem to be right. So I'm worried about that whereas. Scratch it out. Get rid of it. Yeah, I know. That was last month. No, last month. No, winter 2015. It doesn't. It was just a month ago.
The initial drought resolution was in 2014, so that's where that whereas came from. When we were in 2014, we were predicting it for 2015.
Okay. So now I go back to the beginning of the staff report, page 2, second paragraph, about halfway down. It says capital expenditures can be made from the general fund. Fine, that's good. I like that. However, if you go down to the next paragraph, you talk about you need the rate covenant of 125%, and it was 133%, and Brad sort of explained it away, that it was, we're in better shape than we really are if we don't spend this money here in this time frame, da-da-da-da. But that's not what's written here. What's written here is $702,000 for 300 acre feet of suspended table A. The question is, when the city council voted on that, to do that, why weren't they informed by staff that the rate covenant would be reduced to the potential of 104%? To help them make their decisions at the time to vote for it. If they knew it was the rate covenant was going to get lowered to that number in violation of the WSA, how come nobody was told about it at that point in time? That's the way I read this. You probably can explain it away, but that's the way I read it. So now you go back to the possibilities 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ad infinitum. The logical, the common sense approach is item 2. Help the ratepayers. That's who you're responsible to. Help them. Yeah, Deuce was championing to use the some of the TOT and possibility of the sales tax. And this whole thing was structured tonight by the city attorney to allow for that. Then we need to, that's the way we need to proceed tonight. Be responsive to the ratepayer.
Noel Clark.
Noel Clark. Solvang. Well, one of my questions too was on the status of using the TOT. But I have a couple questions. Our water department is an enterprise fund, correct?
Yes.
Is that mandated by state law, or is that something that could be changed by either a vote of the people or a vote of the council?
I'll let Mr. Attorney answer that question.
Prop 218 mandates that the water rates be set as an enterprise fund, but it doesn't mandate, as stated in the staff report, that you can't use general fund for certain types of expenditures. So that's generally considered to be contrary to the enterprise fund, but it's not an illegal difference. What you can't do, it's really that Prop 218 prevents the enterprise funds from being used to supplement the general fund, except for actual expenses of running the enterprise, not the other way around. So sorry for the longer answer, but enterprise fund has a political connotation different than the legal realities.
I'm not sure I understand the answer.
Did you understand that?
Maybe I'm not the only one. Okay, so then I'm also questioning, we have fixed costs to provide water. And I'm curious, what part of our government is allocated to the fixed costs of water? For instance, buildings, staff, attorneys, what percentage of those things is allocated to the water fund? Because I have heard of other communities who, for instance, put 100% of the attorney's fees into the water fund, allocated that expense to water. And I'm thinking there may be some areas here where we could reduce it by looking closely at how we're allocating the expenses.
Brad?
That actually is the overhead charge is $254,685. That's in item 3, alternative 3.
That doesn't tell me what the $253,000 is made up of.
It's a very thick report that
I bet it
that
is.
spread out
It would
all
be
the
interesting
staff
to
costs.
hear that, in some way. I'd like a synopsis of that. I know you talked about ID1 perhaps having a contractual agreement with us. And I hope that you don't just say no because I don't want to, because that's kind of why we're on demand right now. And we're paying higher rates because we're on demand with ID1. So I'd suggest that the city council look very closely at perhaps coming up with a fair agreement with ID1. And again, I have one last question. When will we cease giving can and will serve letters so that we're not having new projects and new water needs when we are in a drought?
Life goes on.
Well, life doesn't go on for other districts. They've done it. So I'm curious why and when will you please do that until we're out of this situation? I think that's it.
Thank you. I have no other speaker slips. Does anyone wish to come forward and speak? Please. Identify yourself for the public, please.
Evening, Brad Joes, ID1 trustee at large. That's why I was sitting in the back and I listened to comments made. And I spoke here before when I first got on the board, and what I was trying to do is unify. You guys are pitting each other against us, okay? We got to stop that business. We got to work together to solve our water problems, okay? So that opening salvo, Mayor, I did not appreciate that, okay? And that is not going to make things better, okay? So now I got that one off. Let's go over your comments. CR6 treatment has not been decided yet. That meeting that you were at and I was at, it's the first time I heard that, those proposals and the budget stuff first time, okay? So no decision's been made yet on that. You talk about, the rates, and I did a little studying on these past rates with you guys, and in 08 there was one, and it cost the customers, all the customers, Solvang and ID1 were all $230,000 for a study that was dropped, the way I understand. Nothing ever came about. 2013, another study was conducted, for $130,000 to help you guys come up with a contract. It was dropped at the last moment, okay? So there's a blown $260,000. That's real money to me. So we got to stop that. You want another contract, the Solvang is going to need to come to us with their proposal. You know, that'd be the best bet. We cannot be judiciously using ID1 dollars and then nothing comes to fruition. Okay, let's look at another one. The service costs, I've reiterated those. The tax, that tax on the property, it was once instilled, and they used it to, it sounded like, to my best knowledge, and I don't have all the knowledge of it because I've just learned in this business, is to get reserves built up so we could handle crises like CR6 and drought, okay? Well, it did come to fruition, that part, and our reserves dropped. But before that, we had a good reserve. I think we even dropped we got rid of it. Is that right, Dan?
No, we plan on spending all of it on
Oh.
6, with the exception of $3 million, which we hold in reserve
Okay. Yeah, because we have,
to pay the state water.
right. Okay, well, those, it ebb and flows, and we drop the rates, that tax, and now it may have to come back because chromium-6 and those $12 million, that's quite a bit of impact to come up with. So that's comes and goes. But the main part is, I just want to reiterate, we haven't made a final decision on treating that chromium-6, and your point is going into the wastewater. That was a good one, because that caught my eye, too, when I saw that. So, but bottom line, let's work together on this stuff, okay? That's what I want to do, and we got to solve this for all the users.
I agree with you. We should work together. We feel like that hasn't happened in the past.
Well, then, like, we got to make it happen.
And some of the reason, like I explained before, that we dropped it is that some of the usury charges that were levied toward us for legal services provided by your attorney didn't seem to be equitable to us. We pay our attorney fees for writing contracts, so should ID1. Not ID1 relay those fees to us to pay. It was stuff like that was
Okay, but we
the
need,
reason we dropped those kind of things.
but we need to be, everybody take their fair share on the cost of all those attorney
Amen.
fees. That's what we need
We've
to
been
do.
trying to do that for years and years.
Okay, but like I say, let's don't have 330,000 when we work on things.
These two guys will jump on it with you and
Okay.
meet with your ad hoc committee.
Okay, that was just my main point there. So let's do this together, and we can get it resolved.
Thank you.
I'm curious, what were the dollar amounts from 2008 and 2013?
2008, Chris gave me 130,000,
Okay,
and the 13 was 230,000.
230?
For 08, 08, 230,000. 13 was 130,000 to develop that one.
The 08 thing was a mutual agreement on exit ramps to the process we were doing, and both sides agreed with an MOU that these exit ramps we'd hit without incurring costs. And so that's why those costs went at those levels.
Good. Yeah, Chris said you'd have a lot more information. I guess you were on those committees. Like I say, I'm just coming up.
Yeah,
to
I was
speed.
on both of them.
Good. And,
Yeah, I just be curious exactly what those figures were for.
yeah. No.
I have my idea, but
Any other questions you guys got?
Thank you, Fudge.
You bet.
Is there anyone else who wishes to make a presentation? Sure, please.
I meant to, when I was up here before, and I forgot. Hans, you had talked about using a portion of the TOT to help with capital expenditures.
a portion.
A
yes,
portion, yeah, I know
yes.
it wasn't
I
20%.
know it was said.
No. But here's my question to you. What does the TOT amount to every year? And what percentage of that is spent? Because I've been told that the surplus is over $3 million, or no, it's more than that. It was more like $15 million. That we have a super big surplus here. And I'm wondering, what are we saving it for if we're not using it for something like this? Just,
I don't think your numbers are correct.
they may not be.
Sandra?
What is our surplus?
Are you referring to just the general fund?
Yes. So, from the TOT.
Oh, well, it all goes into one pot, and
Okay,
at the
well,
end of
then
the
then that
year,
one pot, what's the
so
surplus?
we have about 4.8 million of unassigned monies right now in the general
$4.8
fund.
million. What are we saving it for?
Well, historically, just so you know, as an accounting practice, we don't usually, because the water fund is an enterprise fund, we don't use general fund monies to support that. An enterprise fund, by definition, is supposed to support itself from the rates to cover the fees and the expenses and operations. Not to say that it can't be done, like Roy has talked about, but typically, for good accounting practices, we want to know what the true operating costs of the enterprise fund are.
Well, that comes to my earlier comment. What's going into those true operating costs? What percentage of staff, what percentage of buildings, what percentage of other things are being allocated to water?
Well, there's a certain percentage of each, of the relevant staff that work there that are assigned direct salary costs get charged to the water
That
fund.
would be
Okay, and then
understandable. What about
according
other-
to the study that was done, I think, what did you say, 2011? 2008. So they identified what portion of the cost, for example, we have a purchasing person who does the accounts payable and purchasing, what portion of her time, because she's doing work for everybody, not just the general fund, gets charged to water. And so they look at all of those, the time.
I would like to see a breakdown of that.
I think is that on the
It's in the
Website?
CAFR, isn't it?
No, it'd be available. It's the
The rates
Maximus report.
Okay.
Yeah, you can come in, we can get you a copy of that.
Is there any other comments? Dennis?
Good evening. Dennis Beebe, council members, mayor. I spent 4 years on the ID1 board. I wasn't a member of the committees that met and attempted to get a water service agreement hammered out. The members of our side of the committee would report, and it seemed pretty clear to me that Brad is correct in his observation, and I would say the city has been how do you pronounce it? They've not been as objective or as interested in cooperation as I would have hoped. I'm not a member of the council. I'm not a member of the ID1 board anymore. But it's been my observation that cooperation has not been your strongest suit. And I echo Brad's plea to become a little more cooperative. The reason your rates are so high from ID1 is because of the category of user you are. And the only way to change that is to change your category. And the only way to do that, I think, is a reasonable water service agreement. And yeah, a great amount of money was spent on ID1 side for one particular class of customer. And it was, ID1 board was reluctant to let all their other customers pay for all the meetings that ID1 supported for one customer, and in fact, one category of customer. You may be the only on-demand customer left. Well, it used to be Rancho, it used to be John and Acres, but I don't believe they are anymore because they drilled a new well and they don't need our water, ID1's water. Excuse me. I'm not ID1 anymore. There is a second. Well, again, you're a special category, and I've looked at our rate study, ID1. I'm sorry. I'm a Solvang resident. I'm not an ID1 board member anymore, and that's why I'm smiling so much. I've looked at the ID1 rate study in great detail, and I feel that it had, it was correct for the inputs that it had, and there was a basis for the charges that were recommended by our rate study contractor. And And it was the demand category that was killing you as far as the water you were buying. So you've got to change that if you want to change anything with ID1. And you can't change it unless you step up your level of cooperative attitude. I really recommend it. And I'm, as a citizen, I'm certainly able and willing to assist in any way that I can, as just a citizen with some experience.
I watched you on the board frequently, and I think you were outnumbered several ways on a lot of discussions you did that would have improved ID1. And I'm sorry for that, because you were doing a wonderful job, and I'm sorry you didn't have more assistance in that area.
There were a few, what were they, 4-1? There were a few 4-1s, and I was for the rate study increase on ID1 before I was against it. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Is there anyone else who wishes to comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for action. Who would like to start this? Mr. Attorney. Yes.
One of my, well, I'm going to date myself. The older amongst us will remember Debbie Downer on Saturday Night Live. And so she's the one that put a downer on everything. And that's one of my roles sometimes. And I want to make sure that nobody engages in magical thinking in regards to the ability of ID1 to simply charge a low amount for water to Solvang. All of Solvang is in ID1 already. So the rates that they charge for water for Solvang residents is governed by Prop 218. So Prop 218 doesn't allow users to supplement or supply the payments for other users. Everybody has to pay their fair share under Prop 218. The most recent study by ID1 is the first study that categorized Solvang as this on-demand type of idea. But it's not like a private business situation where ID1 and Solvang could come to a meeting of the minds on a contract and decide that a particular magically low price is a price that ID1 would be willing to sell water to Solvang for. They don't get to do that. So it's I don't want the council or even the public to be thinking that no matter how cooperative ID1 is, they have limitations. They also have a slightly different charge from their organizational documents from many, many decades ago, because part of ID1's charge is the old concept in California about keeping rates low for ag users and not necessarily for urban users. And that's part of their charge. But in that context, even though we don't meet this urban definition for the drought rules, everybody in Solvang would be part of the urban users. I mean, that was even the old concept of ID1 getting into the State Water Project in the first place before they came to Solvang in 1991 with the water supply agreement that we signed. They were in a drought then, and they were thinking of ways to ensure that they could meet all of their goals, which included preserving good, cheap water for the ag users so we can all buy food cheap, and enough water for the urban-type users, and to help solve those drought problems then. So they have added on top of that, they're limited by Prop 218 too. So they can be as cooperative and friendly and willing to help as any human could be, and they're still going to have limitations. Mm-hmm. They can't just be nice. They're going to have to follow their own rules, and everybody else that's in ID1 they aren't going to be able to require them to pay Solvang's share of the system. I mean, all those things are still worth exploring, and everybody's in favor of cooperation because if we're all going to have to cooperate anyway with the new state law on the groundwater, and we already have to cooperate in the river. And we're already in a contract with them for the state water project with the water supply agreement. So cooperation is a good idea, but it isn't gonna be magical. Because they've gotta charge enough to run their system as well. And they have all the same types of water issues you do, except they also have Permium-6 to deal with.
Yes, Matt?
Excuse me, Mayor Richardson, if I could just add one other comment. It's been brought up twice about waste flows, chromium-6 going to our wastewater treatment plant. So just to clarify on that, several months ago, ID1's consultant contacted city staff to have some just preliminary conversation about our ability to accept any waste discharge from a possible chromium-6 treatment facility. So we explained to them that we couldn't accept any hazardous waste or any wastewater flow that might jeopardize our wastewater discharge permit with the state. However, these are all very preliminary conversations. Depending on which direction they go with their treatment, that'll determine what kind of waste flows are generated and how they're going to dispose of those. And I believe that, you know, further down the road, if they are going to generate wastewater flows that they want to send us, they'll have further conversations with us. We'll get something in writing, and we'll bring that to the city council for review and consideration. But, you know, so.
Thank you. Yes. Mr. Skid?
Question. Right now, we have a wastewater agreement with St. Anne's Community Service District, correct?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Right now, our wastewater agreement is with St. Anne's River, or St. Anne's Community Service District, correct?
Yes, we have an agreement with them.
Now, do we have an agreement with ID1 for wastewater, or would they have to enter an agreement with us, or would they be going through the Community Service District?
Well, most likely, they would have to enter into an agreement with the San Ynez Community Services District, who owns the capacity in the plant. And then, of course, that would be subject to the City of Solvang approval, your approval. But yeah, there would have to be, I guess, two different agreements in order for this to work.
So, okay, thank you.
Are there any other comments?
Yeah,
Mr.
I'd just
Deuce?
like to comment on the water service agreement versus the on-demand customer, and I sat through on those meetings, and what I really took out of it was that the difference between being a customer and being contractual. And to me, that was what the water service agreement was. It was a service contract that had a beginning and an end. And when we got to that end, then what happens? Whereas being a customer, it goes on indefinitely. And where prices could have been very different between a on-demand customer or a water service agreement, somewhere out in the future, that water service agreement could terminate, and we would have it no more. Or significantly different rates could come in on the next round of negotiations. That was my understanding on it. And I think that's what made some of us very hesitant, is the long picture. It wasn't about non-cooperation. It was, what security do we have in this? Since we were part of ID1 to start with. As I've said many times, I don't think ID1 would have happened without Solvang. I really don't. There was not enough assessed real value at that time to put ID1 together in 1958-59. So anyway, that's that's neither here nor there. We're here to talk about what we're going to do. We have choices between 1 and 7, and probably some room to negotiate something in between there. And yes, I have thrown out the idea of using, and I'm going to try to verbalize this correctly. General fund monies, which comprises of TOT and sales tax, among other things. And I use the I use the visitors a lot, and have tried to spin that one half a dozen different ways. What it keeps coming back to is Prop 218. It keeps coming back to one class of customer cannot subsidize another class of customer. And it also comes back to the covenant with ID1, and through ID1 CCWA of the 1.25% or 125%. So the best I can do is take a look at item number 2, and look at general fund monies to pay for these one-time expenditures like the Table A water. I've said in the past that as long as there's penalties out there, I'm not going to raise any rates, at least not the molecule rates. And I think this is something we can talk about tonight, is if we're going to get rid of penalties, then maybe we can talk a little bit about some rates. I do know that if we eliminate penalties and raise rates, it's going to go on the lower end, those who use very little water, because they're not paying the penalty. The upper end, I think, are going to make out on it. You know, if you're using 50, 60, 70 units a month, and we reduce penalties and we raise rates a little bit, that's the group that's going to see the huge savings. So, just some things that I'm throwing out. But for capital and this one-time expenditure of $702,000 to make sure that we are, within our covenant, which I know is very important. That's where I want to go. Rates we can negotiate if we can get rid of penalties.
Mr. Zimmerman.
Okay. Start off with Roy, with your comment about the magical abilities of ID1. I think the magic is in the power of suggestion, and we will utilize a better relationship to get a better contract and a better deal and solve this problem. Second is our responsibility as council members is participation. And going back to this suspended water investment that we made, when I made a sound argument against it, I requested an opinion from the council, and I got none, just a motion. And here we are, looking at a shortfall and a breach of contract. And before I go into any other comments or anything else, I'd like for the council to give me a response to that decision and where it's left us today.
Your question again, would you clarify that, please?
Why did you vote in favor of the suspended water when running a deficit and putting us in breach of contract?
My vote went because there's a drought, and I wanted to ensure that we had those kinds of water as in reserve probably at whatever cost, because we're going to be in a heck of a fix if we don't have any of the water. That 300 acre feet is going to may come up to help us one day. And I'm kind of a belt and suspender kind of guy, and I think that was the reason I voted for it. And while I got the mic, if anybody else wants it, regarding tourists and the use of water and them paying for water, you must realize that the only place that tourists don't pay for water is when they use the public restroom facilities. The city pays for that water. That when the tourist when the tourists eat, the water bill goes to the restaurant. When the tourists spend the night, the water bill goes to the hotel. So the tourists generally pay for the water, with the exception of any kind they use the public facilities we have, the three restroom areas. And the city pays for that, but the rest of the water is paid for by the vendors of the services that they provide. So I can't agree that they are not paying for it. My thoughts are that we'll talk about that later. You've had your opportunity to speak. My thoughts are that the water users have done a marvelous job of conserving water. They've conserved 103,000 cubic feet. That's a significant amount of water in 1 year. And I remember C.J. Jackson came before us before we implemented the penalties, and asked us to consider the fact that the people might be able to conserve water without penalty. I'm willing to gamble that at this point, is to eliminate the penalty fees and put the planned rate increases on the table again. It's about a wash, with the exception of the high and low users that you brought up. They would have to pay that anyhow if there wasn't a drought. So, and the idea of the $702,000 to the suspended Table A, I could consider that as a part of the deal, to have the general fund pay for that, and still go ahead with the rate increase and eliminate the penalty fees. Comments?
Well, I don't think Mr. Zimmerman was finished. I think he was just asking us a question, and you responded, and I think he probably has more to say.
Do you?
Okay, does anybody else have anything to say about the suspended water?
Yeah, I do.
Because we're never going to get that 300 acre feet, so that's just ridiculous to argue that.
Well, we are going to get the 300 acre feet, not necessarily when we need it, but we will get the 300 acre feet. I also feel that it was a good idea to go with it. In this day and age, I feel that the system is completely overcommitted, except for in extremely wet years. Whatever water we can lay our hands on, I think we need to do it.
Does anybody else want to respond to Mr. Zimmerman's question?
The only comment I'm going to make is that I agree with both you, Mayor Richardson, and Mr. Deuce. It's one of these situations where we may not get it, but I think we will probably be getting over the course of the years. And it is an item where for a long-term situation on that suspended water. And then I'm going to have other comments in regards to your rate increase. But let Mr.
Go ahead.
Okay. a lot of people are talking about the tourists not paying their fair share on the water. And going back and taking a look at the latest thing, or from the tourist visitors, or the visitor guide from the SCVB, they're talking about the number of day visitors in the city of Solvang. And Mayor Richardson is absolutely right. And the day visitors coming into Solvang are paying for their water as they come in, other than the public restrooms. But on the day visitors coming into Solvang, most of them are walking around. They do have some water usage if they go to a restaurant. But if you figure each day visitor uses 1 gallon of water each as they come in, the day trippers, the amount of day trippers are in the neighborhood of about 1.2 million people. That comes up to, over the course of a year, 3.72 acre feet of water, which in our usage is absolutely I won't say infinitesimal, but extremely minor usage on that one there. For our overnight lodgings, they're staying an average of about 2 nights with their number of visitors, which is overnight is about just under 300,000. 50 gallons a person per day is an average usage. That comes up to about 40 acre feet of water usage by our visitors. So that was per day. So 2 days, they are doing about 80 acre feet of water per year, 4 acre feet for the day visitors per year. You're talking about 84 acre feet of water per year, which, considering the number of people coming through the city of Solvang, is actually a very small amount. In regards to the tourists paying for this, I can always speak for a property I have in town, which is a motel. We have achieved an average of about 15 to 18% per month savings in our water usage. We aren't at the 20%, but we have gone to about an 18% average on our water usage. Unfortunately, that's very nice, getting that 18% cut back on our water. Unfortunately, between the base year of 2013 and the base year and the last year of 2015, all the motels in the city of Solvang had a tremendous increase in occupancy. And our occupancy went up to the point where we are paying an average of over $500 a month penalties for being successful and having more people stay in the city of Solvang. And at the same time, we're also paying another substantial amount in increased TOT to the city of Solvang. So here is a group of businessmen in the city of Solvang that are actually doing more than their fair share. You talk to a lot of the restaurants, and they are in the same boat. Their business is up, their water usage is up over the previous year, and though they have cut back their per capita usage of water, their sales are up enough where it pushes their total sales over the baseline year, so they are paying penalties for being a successful business. No, I can agree with Mayor Richardson's of if we do away with the penalties, go to these higher water rates, and across the board. It's one of these things that somewhere along the line, I can't even remember who said it. I believe it was our attorney who says the ID1 has to get enough income to cover their expenses for running their water system. The city of Solvang has to do the same thing. If we start pulling money out of our general funds on a regular basis to cover shortfalls in our cost of running our water department, we're going to run into the same thing that we ran into back in 2002 when I was first elected to the city council, is that for a number of years, the city had used the general funds to supplement the water department, and all of a sudden we said, hey, we were depleting funds of our general fund. We weren't being able to do other projects that needed to be done within the city, and we had to come up with an absolutely horrendous rate increase. I see Mr. Palmer sitting in the back row, and I think he can remember that awful discussion we had where we had to raise the water rates a substantial amount in that time frame, because the previous city councils, which watching some of the old tapes and remember from Mr. Palmer, he fought viciously but vigorously to raise the rates as we were going along instead of supplementing them. But if we start going out and setting up a principle where we can start pulling funds out of our general fund to cover our expenses on our water, that sets a very bad precedent. And Mrs. I can't remember your name. Yes, you. Noel, you were asking about why we have a $4 million reserve. And you're wondering, what's that reserve for? What that reserve is for is if we have a major calamity befalls the city of Solvang or the state of California, that $4 million gives us enough operating capital to run the city of Solvang for six months to a year. That's why we have a $4 million reserve. It's for contingencies that we haven't even thought about happening, and that's what the reserve is there for these emergency contingencies. And it's having a high water rate and I think if you take a look at, even if we raise our water rate, I'll ask Senator Featherston, if we raise our water rate on a person who has 3 to 4 units of water usage a month, what is that going to change your bill by? Zero to 13. Okay, so if they go from, say, but 0 to 13, our water rate is, what are we paying right now? For somebody who has 10 units of water, what is their, on the water rate, what?
I have a report here of all the water rate usage in the county. At the 500 cubic feet usage, which is 123 gallons per day, Solvang is the second highest in the county with a bill rate of $92.68. But for the 1,000 cubic foot user, which is 246 gallons per day, we drop down below the city of Santa Maria. We're at $109.93, almost $110.
So if we raise our rates, how much are we looking at here again? 35, 40 cents a gallon or a unit?
29 cents.
29 cents a unit.
0 to 13 units.
So on 10 units, we're raising the water bill $2.90. Correct?
Plus the meter fee.
Plus the meter fee. Right. But it's, our usage of our water, we aren't looking at a tremendous amount of water. You say pricing, water rate increase, yes, it's going up, but $2.90 on 10 units of water isn't really an earth-shattering amount of money. So,
I'd like to continue on with some of these monthly usage. A lot of people use 2,000 cubic feet of water. We fall below Casmalia. We fall below the city of Santa Barbara. We fall below Montecito Water District. We fall below Goleta Water District. And we fall below the Carpinteria Valley Water District at $146 for that usage. Casmalia is at $255. City of Santa Barbara is $216. So you can see that our rates are up there above the average, but they're below some of the other larger cities in town. So, and this goes up to the 50. It has the 50 and the 100. So it's and we slip farther down the scale toward the average as the water rates increase. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but go ahead. Is there any other comments? Did you get enough answers, Mr. Zimmerman?
No.
Would you like to continue?
Yeah, a little bit. I guess, you know, it comes down to what's it all, when's the end of it? Like, you know, we're going to do these capital improvements, and yeah, we can show a deficit here. But if we take the money from the general fund, then we're showing a surplus in the fund for water. So year after year, the rates stay the same, and our costs go down and fluctuate. At what point is it enough? And why do we have to continue to do this if we're sufficient with our funds? The money's there.
The money's there, but the water isn't. So we have to improve the system. That's just basically the reason that we're having the water rate increase. We had a 10-year capital improvement plan.
Doing the work, though, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to raise the rates. It's an excuse, but...
Well, I'm sorry you weren't here for the last water rate study, but you'd have understood the choices we had at the time. We had a choice not to raise the water rates for 10 years and then hit with almost 100% increase at the end of 10 years so we could pay for the bonding. We chose a gradual increase at the 5% rate so that we could borrow money at the end of 10 years, but not at a high rate, because we would have had enough backing, enough reserve to carry us.
Exactly my point. So all of these things that we've prepared for, that we've justified the rate change for, are not being implemented. So what's going on?
Well, my crystal ball didn't discover how I could predict it. The best we could do is our estimate of the improvements we needed in the system, and there were contingencies that occurred that we couldn't anticipate, and so we had to spend money to cover those anticipated conditions. Matt, did you have a comment?
Well, I thought if you'd like, I can mention some of the capital improvements and studies that we've worked on since I've been here. It's been 5 years now. So I started with the city when the last water and sewer rate study was in process. But we've done major SCADA improvements. That's the computer controlling system for operating our wells and monitoring our reservoirs. So that's saved a staff time and money in operating in operating all of our facilities. So if you'd like, anytime you can come by in the water shop, and our staff can show you how that works. So basically, from the office there on the computer, you can observe the operating of all of our wells and reservoirs, and from the office they can turn on wells, turn off wells, and do that type of thing. So we've done that work. Of course, we've done all the engineering work, and we drilled 5 new wells. There hadn't been any new wells in the city in almost 20 years until now. So that was quite an endeavor. We have a small staff, so doing engineering and things like that, it takes time, and some of these projects are complicated. We're about a third of the way done with construction on the wellhead improvements for the HSA South well. So here in a few months, we'll have the first new well in service in the city, like I said, in almost 20 years. In addition to that, we've been doing normal routine maintenance. Some of the projects included in the capital improvement program, when the water rate study was approved 5 years ago, included fire hydrant and valve and meter replacements that are all ongoing. And then miscellaneous repairs at some of our reservoirs. Of course, at several of our wells, we've had to replace the pumps and motors. They only have a certain useful lifespan, and so since I've been here, there's been 1 pump and 2 motors that had to be replaced on some of our wells. And then we've completed the update of the water master plan. We've completed the EIR for the River Wells project, which was lengthy process, costly process, and we recently completed the water supply management plan. We also completed a study that enabled us to put well 21 into service and constructed disinfection facilities for that well so that it could be put into service during the drought. It hadn't been in service for several years. We also completed a preliminary study looking at the costs associated with treatment for well 22, and we're in the middle now of the blending study to look at if we can blend that and reduce our treatment costs. So here in a few months we'll have results of that. So there's been quite a bit done, and some projects were deferred, and in fact 5 years ago what the city council asked the staff to do was see if we could eliminate some projects and see if we could defer some projects or postpone them past the 5-year rate study horizon. And that's what we did. We identified 2 projects that we eliminated from the capital improvement program, and we deferred several projects. So we haven't been replacing the valves, fire hydrants, and meters and water lines as much as we should be. We basically are deferring that, which, you know, the water, every pipe in our system eventually is going to need to be replaced. So, and we've just been deferring that, hoping that they'll last longer, and just repairing leaks as they occur. We did have one leak, as you may recall, it was emergency about this time last year under Alamo and Potato Creek, and that cost us about $70,000 to do an emergency repair. And so anyway, that's where we're at.
I guess my point is more so just, you know, if we would have stuck to the plan, 22 and 23, we know there's water there, and if we would have done the treatment facility and spent the money on that, we would have the water that we had to purchase, since we spread ourselves thin and did other projects and other things. So really we would have saved the money, either 1 million or whatever this is here, 1.1, by having water. So we wouldn't have to purchase as much water, which wouldn't have cost us more money. So now we're just like have a double negative impact on our funds because we're not sticking to the plan, and we're spreading ourselves thin, and then blaming it on, well, we're doing all this work that we have to pay for the new construction and this and that for O&M. It's just all excuses, and then we built in this fee for our bond or leveraging ourselves, and that we've been paying that for 5 years, and we're not even getting a bond now. So what? Right? I mean, that's what you said.
No, what I said
part of the
was that
study was we were going to get issue bonds.
Right, but the fees were set lower based on the idea that we would issue bonds in the future. So that the fact that we haven't issued bonds has hindered having money for capital expenditures, but it kept the rates. That was one of the lower ways to set the rates back based on the 2011 study. So that decision not to go out for bonds hasn't increased rates because the whole bonding thing kept rates lower at that point in time. Whereas if we'd gone to the bonds, you'd have the capital improvements, but you'd also have now then the expense of the bonds, which would have to be added in. And anytime you issue a bond, they're going to have a rate covenant too, which will cover all of those capital expenditures, not just, so you wouldn't be able to have this ability to use the general fund to pay for the capital expenditure. You would have had to have raised the rates to pay for all of that. So that particular decision has actually ended up probably saving significant money. There may be a point in time in the future where you want to do bonds again, because what bonds do is they spread the cost of those capital improvements out over a much longer period of life of the system, so we don't make Fred Koval pay for the $4 million treatment plant just by himself. It spreads it out. So that's why people make those decisions. But in Solvang, we've always been stuck with the capital cost of the state water project that was agreed to in 1991, and we can't fix that. If I could magically go back and change that, I don't think we would have the emotion involved in dealing with the water system that we have in Solvang currently. And that's something we can't fix. The The capital cost of that agreement is what's driving the where Solvang sits on those rates, not any other decision any council has made since 1991. Your general funds have been impacted. It's not healthy for a city to not have unallocated reserves. You can't spend them down to zero. Well, we did at one point in time, and that was scary. And it's not good stewardship from your staff to let you get that far. So if we could solve that capital cost of the state water project, that would be great, but we can't. You can't get out of that contract. It was tried, and Solvang lost. Okay. The cost of the molecules that come through state water is really actually small compared to all the other sources of water. And so sadly from the staff level, a lot of times we have to, in our brains, look at that and go, okay, I mean, I know that capital cost for the state water project is such a huge nut that it's really painful, but except for a brief time just recently, the quality of the water through the state water project has been tremendous as compared to all of the other sources of water. It's been a tremendous help to your sewage treatment plant because you don't get as many bad solids from that water going through the system. And the incremental cost of those molecules is a lot less. That's what led some earlier councils to want to defer these other types of wells. Because until we hit this drought, even when we were just getting 50, 60, 70% of our allocation through the state water project, you were getting enough water, and it was the highest quality water you could get. And so it was considered bad recommendation from staff to suggest that we pay for a treatment plant on well 22. We had a previous council, I don't think anyone here was on that council, who one person, I can't say the council said this, but one person on that council literally told staff never to say the words well 22 again. Because no, it wasn't Fred, or I'd have quoted him. No, I won't say who the other person was. No, you wanted the well. There was, yeah, okay, I got my wells confused. We had another council member who told us, don't ever bring that well up again, because that person didn't want to hear it, because the treatment costs were considered so expensive given the fact that state water is always going to be about 60 or 70%. This drought
Even at 100%, the state water's costing us 2,000 plus an acre foot.
Right,
I don't know how you're doing your math.
not the molecules.
What do you mean not the molecules?
Not the molecules. The water there's two separate charges for state water. One is the capital cost of buying into the water system, and that's about what, 1.5 million, or is that more? What's the annual cost of the?
3 million.
That's the 3 million. That doesn't pay for the molecules. That just pays for the pipe.
That's plumbing.
And we can't fix that.
I mean, that's a nice way to abate the situation, but it's paying for the water. You don't pay that bill, you're not going to get the water.
Yeah, but there is a fixed cost, but we can't take that fixed cost away. You take not one drop of state water, and you still have got to make the annual state water payment.
That's right.
Even if you get no drops.
Yeah, that means it's worth $3 million for nothing, no water.
Right. But that decision was made in 1991.
Oh, that's expensive water.
Yeah, we can't get out of it.
That's right.
So would you rather we take no water and pay the $3 million? Or would you rather we take a very high quality water and pay marginally less for those molecules than we'd have to pay running other portions of the system? And many times...
I'm just talking about your general statement that it's the cheapest water when we're producing at like $100 an acre foot up one of our river wells. And this bill for a pipeline, we're not guaranteed.
No one's trying to justify the pipeline. All I'm saying is nobody here can fix that. That decision was made in 1991, and you spend about $5 million trying to get out of that contract and lost.
I understand that. I'm just wondering where you're getting it's cheaper.
The water itself
From
is
math.
cheaper.
Oh, it's free because we're paying for the pipe, right?
Yeah, paying for the pipe.
Wow, okay. Man, geniuses.
Water quantity, state water is about $160 an acre foot. But we can produce it out of our wells for $125 an acre foot. That's what I didn't hear. Okay?
Don't have to treat it.
We digress.
You know, I disagree. I think the history of this whole thing is that the citizens of Solvang voted to have state water. That's what happened. I did not, but the majority of the citizens voted for state water. And then the city council, in their infinite wisdom, decided they wanted 1,500 acre feet out of the 2,000.
4 to 1.
Pardon me?
4 to 1 wanted it.
Yeah, right, 4 to 1. Leo was the only one that voted against it. Okay, so we are now paying for others' mistakes.
No, well, we've just bought 300 more acre feet.
Yes,
The
we did
same
because
thing.
we have no water.
I mean, that's what they were saying.
You're gonna turn
back
your
then.
faucet on and sand and air are gonna come out of it, and we don't want that. Our charge up here is to provide for the health and safety of our community. And water is one of those issues. Rats, you know, that's too bad. I'm sorry about the rats, but I do not believe that all the kitchens and all of the bakeries and the restaurants in this community have rats. I disagree with you. No more comments from you.
Now we're digressing. Let's bring this back to the recommendation of the staff, which is discuss and provide staff direction on the implementation of the annual water rate increases. There are two other recommendations. Let's discuss that one first. Discuss and provide staff direction on the implementation of the annual water rate increases. I favor item number 4, which is eliminate the penalties and go with the rate increases up as specified in the rate study and recognized by Prop 218. Is there any comments?
I could agree, but I would like to modify that a little bit. I would say we get rid of the penalties. We go for the 3.71%. Is my mic still working? Yeah. Okay, I'm not hearing it like I used to hear. Maybe my ears are not working. But then I would suggest that we forgive the 5.25 from last year's. One, because of penalties that were paid by the upper end, and for heavy conservation and the potential loss of property in landscaping, or spending a bunch of money in re-landscaping, tearing out old and putting in new. So I guess what I'm saying, Jim, is the 3.71, the current year's increase in meter and water, and whatever the sewer was. Yeah, the 702 would be a general fund, and I stated that one already.
Well, I appreciate that, but we're falling behind in what we need to for capital improvements. We're falling behind what our plan was, and since we had these unexpected expenses and unexpected events, I think we need to go ahead with the 218 plan and go to the full rate, which would have been anyhow if we had not had this drought condition. Are there any other comments?
So you are saying that we should do the 8.96
Yes.
increase?
Mhm.
I would agree with you.
Is that a motion?
Okay, we want the 702,000 out of the general fund. That's what you're saying. As long as that means that we can still do human services projects when the grants come up. Otherwise,
Yeah,
I'm out
yeah.
of the picture. I won't do that.
No,
Okay, and then 8.96 increase for water,
for the water and the, s- and the. s-
and the 1.6 for wastewater.
Right. I would like to ask, the question is, where, do we have $702,000 someplace that we can use without too much loss of faith, and be comfortable spending that kind of money for this?
Yeah, as she said, we have in excess of 4 million in undesignated reserve. So we've just reduced that by 702,000
In the general fund.
in the
In
general.
the general fund. I'm like Ed here. I just don't want to set a precedent. That's my concern.
Well, we can do it and demand that at some point in time, 100 years from now, that they have to repay that to the general fund. The water enterprise has to repay it, because we've done that before.
Yeah.
We've loaned money and then they've repaid it. Or was it the other way around? The water loaned money to the general fund.
No, never. Yes?
Well, I was just going to comment, just as a reminder about kind of the overall financial situation before you decide. This year, when you adopted your budget, and I'm not trying to be the person who cried wolf here, like Brad says, but, okay, so we adopted a budget that was already going to put you in the hole at 2.5 million. Now, we've backed off that a little bit. We don't think we're going to spend quite that much. But the amount of money you had available at the end of June in the water fund was about 2.3 million. So if we back that off the 1 million, and let's say you spend, instead of 2.5, even you go in the whole $1 million, you're still going to have a problem, because that's going to reduce your overall cash for next year that you have available. We're going to be right back here next year telling you that you do not have enough money in the water fund to do capital projects, to pay the state water payment. I mean, it's dire.
So you're indicating that we should go with the full 218 increases?
Unless you have another option. I just, I'm worried, because we're going to be back here, at the end of June next year telling you that you're in the hole in the water fund. And we're talking about your reserves. They are going to be gone if we continue spending, if we do the projects that we've planned. That is my concern, is that you are not going to have enough money next year. And even if you go to 8.96%, that's only going to raise, as Brad said, about $240,000. You're still going to have issues next year. I mean, this is a long-term problem that we have spent, and you're not going to have the money to do these capital projects.
We're not going to be able to raise the rates high enough to, what do we do? Times them by 3 or 4 times the rate to break even, to meet the million or whatever?
Well, that's what the new rate study will show, is that, depending on the capital projects that you plan and just ongoing operations and expenditures, that, the rate study could indicate that rates are going to have to go higher over the next 5 years. So I just, this isn't going to solve your problem today just by increasing the rates here. I think when we find that we do the rate study again, we're going to come back to you, and it's going to be much higher because of the fact you have these projects. And we kind of get back to this situation where you have to either, you're trying to solve the drought problem and store up the water, or you keep the rates low, artificially low. There's no easy answers here, but the residents talk about we need more water, so you're going to do those things to get the water, but at a cost. And so the other side of that equation is it's, reducing the amount of money you have and going to result in higher rates.
So what I'm hearing you say is we're running into the big financial trouble with the capital improvements. Is that correct?
Well, that's one factor, but you have the state water payment, you have additional water purchases,
And I don't have the capital improvement numbers right in front of me, but it seems to me there for a couple of years with the river wells, that was a couple million, and 3 to 4 or 5 million for treatment plants, and that has just kind of been bumping up every year. We kind of had the same conversation a couple of years ago, with the river wells in that, and so that's moving along. And then I think at one time, didn't we really push the treatment plant way out?
you did.
Currently, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and,
guess
and so we were
to
just
get-
going to concentrate on wells.
Get back to the original question, is I think the general fund reserve could absorb that 700. This is a good opportunity, a one-time expense that you use a general fund undesignated reserve for. I think that was the initial question, but yeah, we continually are continually telling you that the rates are gonna be an issue continually. And that's what this next rate study, we're gonna look at the capital needs. You know, if you have a blending study that shows you still need treatment on 21, 22, it's $1.2 million. That's not in any of our capital yet.
Right.
You know, that's gonna be a new project. So those projects will all get focused into this next rate cycle, and you'll be able to clearly see it, that, you know, this is what it's gonna take if you're gonna do this full capital project.
And question for staff again. We're talking capital improvements for water, but we also have to take a look at funding for other major capital improvements that come out of our general fund, correct? We have,
On the general fund side, yeah.
on the general
Yeah.
fund side, so, you know, we cannot be rating the general fund to subsidize the water without risking other capital improvements that need to be done within the city of Solvang, correct?
Right, and that's why we do a 10-year plan. We try to show you as much as you can see out into the future as to where you're gonna need your monies. And, you know, Matt has done that. We've got the Mission Drive stuff. The good thing with the Mission Drive, say those improvements, is we're gonna have $3 million in Measure A monies coming to the city in the next couple of years for that. So you've got another funding source. Our seismic retrofit on the bridge, all those projects are gonna be capital needs. Matt's going out, he's trying to get grants for some of that stuff, and that's gonna help. But yeah, we're always gonna tell you, you know, that we're taking the long-term approach on all of our funds to try to make sure that they're always gonna be viable, and water's the one that we struggle with. And I know Sandra, since she's been here, has been, make sure they know, and so we try to continue to tell you that, you know, there is a light and it's a train at the end of that tunnel.
I'd like to propose a motion. The motion would be that we drop the penalty until such time as the water conservation rate goes below 12%, which is half the governor's recommendation. If the water conservation rate goes below 12%, the penalty rates will automatically be increased, number one. Number two, that we go with the Plan 218 increase, the 3.71 and 8.96.
And 1.6.
And also for the sewer rate too. I'm looking for a second. I'm sorry?
What happened to the general fund contribution?
Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. That'll be a separate issue, I think. Right now, I want to see the penalties dropped, the water rate increase, and if the the conservation rate falls below 12% over the 2013 numbers, then we automatically reinstitute the penalty rates to get that conservation rate back into line.
Just for clarification, would that be for 1 month or for a period of time?
It would be
that it
monthly.
drops?
Mr. Mayor, I couldn't think about supporting anything with the possibility of, anything like that with the possibility of penalties coming back.
I'm going to second it for purpose of discussion.
I'm afraid that as we use water and we forget about the penalties, we're going to start increasing the water usages beyond what we should be doing. We're supposed to be conserving, and I think I'm willing to gamble with the public that they'll continue their conservation methods. But if they don't, then we've got to remind them that they've got to conserve, and the way to do that is to put the penalty rates back on.
I believe that there were people that were in the lower tiers that never were in danger of penalties that conserved just as much.
But we have to remember that if it wasn't for the drought, they would be paying these rates now, not now. So that was our plan, was a 218 plan, and we considered that the drought was going to have an impact on it, that we would have to not raise the rates. But we're at the point now where the conservation methods are working. We can eliminate the penalties and reinstitute the water rate increases that we had already planned for. And it's been moved and seconded. Are there any more discussion?
I want to amend it and eliminate the meter increase.
No. Can't eliminate meter increase. It's part of the plan, part of the 218 plan. Any other comments? Would you call the roll, please? It's moved and seconded.
Mayor Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Skit,
Yes.
Councilmember Deuce,
No.
Councilmember Jameson,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmerman,
Of course not.
But that was a no?
It's a no.
That was a 3-2?
3-2 vote. Motion passes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Now let's talk about the $702,000.
Actually, just quick clarification, was the way we put the three items, the sewer was was the sewer in on that?
Sewer was included in it, yes. Now let's talk about the $702,000. Do we want to finance the purchase of the 300 acre feet of surplus, Table A water from the general fund, or no? Discussion.
What are our choices, Mayor?
Our choices are we'd take it from the general fund, from the reserves, or we don't. We'd pay for it out of the water fund.
We take it out of general fund.
Or you cut the check, Mayor.
I'm sorry?
You want to cut the check?
Do I want to cut the check? I may, if somebody's out of town, I may have to sign it. Is there a motion?
Okay, I'm making the motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a discussion? Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Deuce,
Yes.
Skit,
Yes.
Jameson,
No.
Zimmerman,
No.
motion passes. Mayor Richardson.
No. Motion fails.
Vote is 2-3.
3-2, motion
Motion
fails.
fails.
So right now, we're going to pay for the 300 acre feet of Table A water out of the water fund. That's end of that?
I've got a question then. I know we snuck through this year because of pushing the 708, kicking that one down the can. Next year, we're going to be sitting here having the same damn discussion.
Well, actually, we're going to have a new rate next year.
A water rate study by then, possibly. The item recommendation 2 was to provide staff direction and implementation annual sewer rate increase. That was included in the original motion. Recommendation 3, review stage 2 drought resolution and provide direction on potential changes. We've made one change. Is there any other changes we want to make to that?
I want to bring back the $702,000 coming out of the general fund. I want to bring that back to the table to vote.
You have to be on the positive side of the vote in order to do that. You were on the negative side of the vote.
Yeah, I could change my vote.
Can't recall the motion.
He was on the winning side of the vote because it failed 3-2. So at least one person on the majority has to be willing to reconsider, and then there has to be a majority of the council that wants to reconsider as well.
So Councilman Zimmerman wants to reconsider the motion on the 702 state water purchase, 300 acre feet. Does anybody else wish to side with
300
that?
acre feet?
300 acre feet.
300 acre feet.
I will support.
That's 2. Do we need a majority to do that?
Yes, no, you do. For purpose of discussion, I'll support his request.
Okay, the motion is back on the table. Same motion.
For sake of discussion,
We can
If we-
discuss it again. yes.
okay. If we don't take it from the general fund, you're going to take it from the water proceeds
Mhm.
And how is that going to work, Sandra? It's not going to work.
Well, I mean, if we don't spend all the money that we were anticipating this year, you could potentially have the money next year to cover that, but given the way things are going and the income is down because people are conserving, which is what you want, I'm not sure you'll have the money in the water reserves to cover it next year.
Well, what in essence we have done, or we almost did, and probably still can, was kick this thing down, just kick this can down the road another year. It's going to pop up next year, whether it's pops up in the 218 discussions or it pops up on its own. It's going to be there. It's going to be on the line item. Next year it will, and I doubt we can kick that one down another. Or I know we can't, because that's going to be a bill. It's not a capital improvement that we can say, oh, we can shove that down another year. That's going to be a bill that comes in the mail that's going to demand $702. We're not going to kick it down. We're going to have to figure out how to pay it next year. It's going to end up in the 218 probably discussion, or it's if the bill comes in before, we just write the check and figure it out. And it's going to go against the water fund.
Yeah, I say we
Next year.
take the opportunity.
Right now, we have the opportunity to go with unrestricted general fund money, which there is enough of it. There's plenty of it. We're not putting ourselves in danger, I don't feel. I think this is the prudent thing to do. This is a one-time purchase. It's not an annual. We're not gonna find Table A money again. This is all there was. This is all there was in that Table A money, or water. It's a one-time purchase for $702,000. And I don't want to kick it down.
Did you have a comment?
No, but I'll make a motion to use general funds to pay it. 702.
That was the motion we're
Yeah.
recalling.
Okay.
I'd like to remind us that taking money from the general fund is a slippery slope. We did that once before. We did that to pay legal fees and other fees, to where we paid down our reserves down to practically zero. And I, for one, don't want to see that happening again. We got to remember what our reserves are for. It's like our own personal bank accounts. We have to have money in reserve in case we have hospital charges, or we have a car wreck we've got to pay for, and where we don't want to borrow money on a credit card. We want to pay for it with cash. If we borrowed on a credit card, we're going to pay interest on the money. That's the same situation here. So I don't want to see the money come out of the general fund.
I think it's a little different though, because we're not subsidizing water rates. It's a one-time purchase.
If that is the motion, then I'm seconding it.
The motion has already been stated. We're just recalling the previous motion, which was to spend.
Okay, so your motion
We're
is.
recalling your motion. You made the motion to spend the 702 out of the
Yeah.
general fund into
Yeah.
the, so we're recalling your motion.
I second it.
And Ed seconded
Okay.
it, so now we can vote on it.
Okay.
Okay, I just have one question. Where are we now with, that we have to have 125% with our covenant, as far as, where are we now with that?
Well, with the 702, weren't we at 126 for this year?
It's an estimate, but yeah, that was
a
it.
guesstimate, but that was with the 702 getting kicked
Gone.
down.
Okay.
Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Deuce,
Yes.
Skit,
Yes.
Jameson,
Yes.
Zimmerman,
Yes.
Mayor Richardson.
No.
Motion passes 4-1.
Pass 4-1. Okay. That's a done deal.
On the resolution, you were about to ask if there's any other changes that need to be made.
For the drought resolution?
Yes, Mr. Koval has pointed out that our resolution has the incorrect penalties in it from a prior version. That is the most recent. What you've done is made changes to that at council meetings. We've not done a new resolution. So now that you're removing the penalties, but you're actually putting in that they'll kick back in, if you could give us a motion to adopt a resolution that clearly states the corrected penalties, that would be great.
I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, I want to know what it's going to say. Yeah, what's it going to say?
The motion is to correct the is an administrative correction,
What
actually.
we'll do is we'll bring back what the resolution should say.
The corrected copy.
Corrected
corrected,
copy
yeah.
as a
We'll vote on that.
resolution, and it'll have that trigger mechanism that you talked about.
Okay, I'd still like to know what it's going to say when you bring it back to us.
It's gonna list the penalties that we currently are charging all customers, and it'll indicate that they will be suspended until such time the conservation drops below the 12.5%.
So instead of being 0 to 10, it'll be 0 to 13?
There'll be no penalty. You'll go to your normal rate structure, 0 to 16 and 16 and over.
And
My garden's coming back.
let me get my mind around this. The water rate increase was only on a two-tier table.
Yeah, residential is
So-
0 to
so
16 and
we'll
16 and
drop
over.
the 5 tiers back to 2,
Right, the penalties will go away.
and the penalties will go away, then we'll bring it back up to 5. Okay. Good.
The second tier starts at 16.
That's the old rate
Okay.
structure from
Okay.
prior years.
Okay, now there's been a motion made that we correct the resolution.
Did you make that?
Direction to bring back a corrected resolution.
The
with
motion
those,
is
and
bring
we'll bring
back.
that back next meeting.
Okay. The motion is to
Okay.
bring back a corrective.
Okay, bring it back. I'll second it.
Yeah, I don't think we need a motion. We've got direction to bring back a resolution so that you can vote on it then. And we've kind of discussed the language that'll be in it, but this way we've gotten that clear direction, and then you'll have the resolution before you to vote on then, and the exact language so you can look at it and then massage it and get it done at the next meeting.
Cooler heads prevailed. Thank you.
Okay, so that means that all of the things that we couldn't do before, like wash down our sidewalks, et cetera,
Those are all going to stay in
The
there.
only direction
We didn't
got
hear
was
that to remove
was
all of those, just the
change
penalties.
the penalty structure so that the penalties are suspended
And accurately,
unless and until,
We didn't suspend stage 2. We just knocked out the penalties.
right. When it comes back on the agenda, you can look at all the other things if you want to.
okay,
The rain's doing a pretty good job with sidewalks right
yeah,
now.
right.
is there
That was just one
is
of
there
the
an agreement
things.
on this? Then I'll ask for a voice vote. Is all those in favor say aye?
Head shake.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Passed? Yes, ma'am.
I did want to just remind you that the governor's requirements for the 25%
Right.
conservation are still in place, and I'm certain will be in place through the rest of this year.
That's why we're taking a chance with the users that they will keep honoring their conservation methods because there is no penalty.
I do have one other question for staff, because I know this will actually, for our rates, for our income coming in, do we have an idea of how many people have actually gone in and changed their landscaping to drought tolerant landscaping? Because that point there, even, going off of drought restriction is still going to cause a lower income. Do we have any idea on that one there?
Matt says about 40 people have applied for the funding. That many more may have done it and not applied.
Okay, thank you.
Just for the heck of it, from where I'm sitting in my front yard, I can see 5, and the 2 with rocks from way back don't count on that.
Item 7, agenda.
Item 7, discussion and direction for ad hoc committee with the San Ynez Band of Chumash Indians.
Staff report?
At your February 10th, 2014 meeting, you established a two-member ad hoc committee to meet with a similar committee from the San Ynez Band of Chumash Indians. Mayor Richardson and Councilmember Deuce are the Solvang committee members, and Chairman Armenta and Tribal Councilmember Khan represent the tribe. The committee was established for a duration of 1 year and then extended by the City Council on February 9th, 2015 for another 1 year period that would actually end next month. The two ad hoc committees have met several times to discuss several items of mutual interest, which was the intent of the committee when established. Most recently, the city's ad hoc subcommittee requested and was granted approval for preliminary architectural plans for a possible expansion of the Solvang Fire Station to provide a new aerial ladder truck that will be purchased by the tribe for Santa Barbara County Fire Department at a cost not to exceed $1.6 million. Preliminary plans have been completed, and the architect has provided a preliminary estimate of $38,000 to complete plans and specs for construction. A ballpark figure on construction costs for the expansion is about $500,000. The tribe is also committed to fund an additional firefighter paramedic position at Station 30, which would start April 1st of this year, with an estimated annual cost of $581,000. What we're looking for is for the ad hoc committee to get some guidance from the city council on potentially sharing in that expense or requesting 100% funding from the tribe for the expansion for the ladder truck. Obviously, Solvang will see a benefit in having that and the paramedic stationed here at our station. So that's our report, and if the subcommittee members have any other information they want to provide, that they could do that at this time.
Are there any questions of staff report?
Is the one additional firefighter all that's going to be needed in addition with having the ladder truck?
EMT.
Yeah, that'll make a 4-person crew. So it's enough to fund a full-time position for every shift. Yeah.
One additional firefighter, that is per shift, and so it isn't a $500,000 one person.
Right, it's a rotating, 24/7, one person, yeah.
Cost for renovation of the fire station. Are there any questions of staff report?
How much have we already spent on plans?
The preliminary plans were about maybe $6,500, and the tribe is reimbursing us for that. So the city is out zero.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll go to the audience for public comment. Does anybody in the audience have any public comment regarding this agenda item? Mr. Koval.
Fred Koval, Solvang, Mayor and City Council members. I think it would be a win-win for the city if, and only if, the city does not contribute one dime for the improvements, for the person, for the maintenance, for the life of the ladder truck residing here at the Solvang City Hall. I cannot see where the city gets any advantage. Do we really need a hook and ladder for any portion? Well, you might say for the tribe's hotel, but that benefits them. I don't think that benefits us. So I'd just like to encourage all of you to make sure that this is a win-win for the city, and again, for the ratepayers who you represent.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the council for discussion and action.
I'll discuss. 1983, the windmill fire. 3 alarm brought a snorkel in from Lompoc City, aerial. Later that year, what started as a flue fire got into the attic of Burkholm's. 2 alarm brought aerial in. And I believe that was Lompoc's snorkel. The next one was the Village Lane incident. We had our own aerial at that time. Actually, we made the decision to buy it after the windmill fire. We just hadn't taken delivery of it in time for Brookholmes. So it was used extensively on the Village Lane fire. That was pretty much when I got out of it. I'm sure it had been used since then in Solvang. But yes, there's a good justification for aerial in Solvang. And Station 30 is the station that makes sense to have it in the San Ynez Valley. Have the quickest coverage, east, west, or north out of Station 30. So it's where it makes sense.
Comments?
I don't really see how it makes sense with them, the most, where it's going to most likely be used. The proximity, I think, would be Station 32, don't you think? To get out of Solvang in such a small radius of turning, that's a big truck. And then go through traffic, go through stoplights, get over there. Doesn't really make sense. Especially with the cost that you have to put up here. Solvang isn't in a financial position to take something like that on.
During our discussions and negotiations, we'll come up with an MOU or a document regarding our discussion and negotiations, and of that will come back to the council for action. We won't make the final decision. The council will make the final decision. It's my hope that the tribe does cover the cost of the fire and the personnel at 100%. They have an advantage of having the 12-story hotel in San Ynez, but they also have a nice hotel here they want to protect. So I imagine that's some of the motivation that they have for asking it to be in Station 30, and it improves Station 30 and it improves coverage for the rest of the valley too. So.
I just want to interject, the cost of the paramedic is already a contract with the county, so they're not asking, that isn't something the city would be participating in a financial matter, just to clarify that.
So this is just the actual
the addition to the station.
Addition to the station. Okay.
And our responsibility now is that we take care of the station. So when this new bay is built, it'll be our responsibility to do any maintenance or repairs.
Our lease agreement with them is we maintain the outside, they maintain the inside.
And what about the trucks? They maintain the trucks?
And the trucks are theirs, yeah.
That's county that is maintaining.
We did ask them to tend the flowers around the building, though. Do we have our...
The fire department is laughing at that.
Yeah, right. Well, those guys sit around on a nice, comfortable chair in the front of the building enjoying the sun all the time.
Well, we're okay. So what the deal is? Jim and I are gonna talk with the tribe. If you want us to pay for the whole thing, tell us that you want us to pay for the whole thing. If you want us to not pay for anything, then tell us to not pay for anything. Or somewhere in between.
I think we have our direction, silence.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
I think we need to get more information from the ad hoc committee and have a discussion to see what the tribe is willing to do and go from there.
We will report that back at the next council meeting after our meetings.
And find out if there's any interest as a backup for the airport fire department.
You know, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. So.
What was that?
Just wanted to see if
Neil's on the board at the airport.
Yeah.
He's interested in fire backup there. You know.
Well, you got Station 32 right there.
Yeah.
Right, I think that might be a good place for the truck.
No, actually, Solvang is what makes sense because of center of the population. Buildings that need aerial equipment. Look at what's out in Buellton. This is all within this battalion, centrally located. The only way it could be better would be have an actual truck crew in here.
Okay, there, we have a fireman in the audience. Do you think maybe
Yeah,
we
I
should
know.
ask him a question? Let him tell us what he thinks?
I'd love, I was hoping he'd come up and say that and not rely on my old retired status.
David, they're looking for some comments from you.
Look at that.
Oh.
Whoa.
Good evening. I'm David Niels. I'm a battalion chief with Santa Barbara County Fire, and I've met with your city manager, Brad, already. I've been the point person elected for the county fire department to work with the city of Solvang and the Chumash on the development of where we're going to house. As of right now, we're calling it Truck 30 for this station, so I'll keep using those terms for Truck 30. I do know our delivery date is shooting for October of 2016, so the truck is under construction. We had people go back to the facility in Pennsylvania, and the plans are already in the works for that buildup of the truck, so it's coming. Now we need to figure out where we're going to house it. In regards to your question about Station 32, currently we cannot get a truck inside Station 32. We brought up Truck 11, and we've driven the streets of Solvang, Buellton, as well as the airport, and our operators could not get the truck inside Station 32 with the current layout of that property. So your question, is a valid point, and that's where we're at right now. So the build out of Station 32 just purely won't allow us to get the truck in. Could things be redone perhaps at a large amount of cost, probably, to regrade and rechange the layout of that station? But currently, yeah, I can't even get in there. So that's where we're at. Yes.
Question, is this a single truck, or is it like basically a hook and ladder type, where we have a truck and trailer? Like, I think I've seen Truck 11, which is basically down in, or stationed by UCSB, which is the long traditional hook
That's
and ladder.
correct. Truck 11 and its replacement, Truck 30, are being built together. The County of Santa Barbara, the fire department, is going to receive those two trucks both in October. I believe one a little bit ahead, so we can get our personnel trained up, and that will be the truck in Goleta. So it is a 60-foot tillered aerial, and it has a 105-foot ladder.
Just out of curiosity, put cost aside, let's say, and truly looking at the safety factor, is it best to have the truck here or at Station 32? If we can do whatever we want, build whatever we want for the safety of and the use of the truck, what's your personal opinion, truly?
Well, the direction that I came to for being here tonight was to be here at Station 30. Those discussions would have to go up higher, along with the chain of command and also the Chumash and the city. That would be something that I can't answer for this evening.
Right, I got you.
But, as it was mentioned, a central location such as Solvang feeds, multiple areas in the San Ynez Valley. And, I'm glad you brought up the points in the years, of the fire in 1983. The aerial apparatus serves a tremendous purpose, and the city of Solvang, in regards to some of its construction and fire protection systems, really is one of those cities that's on our target hazard list, that having an aerial platform is an important thing. And waiting for apparatus to come from the city of Lompoc, which is a very busy department as well, or the city of Santa Maria, is a huge time delay. So hopefully that answers a few of your questions. All right, thank you.
Thank you for that. I think we have our direction. Okay.
Your direction is we want them to pay for it all.
Yes.
Okay, but we'll maintain the
we're
building.
not
We'll
gonna-
maintain the building like we do now in our agreement with this.
Yeah, we will negotiate to a satisfactory solution. Yeah. The next thing on the agenda is member reports. I don't think there's any meetings. If there's no objection, then we'll stand adjourned. No objection?
No objection.
We're adjourned.
Well,
This